So our next shop talk is entitled Warren Buffett Says Your Success in Life is Defined by One Word. It's the most obvious solution to our current problems in business and society. Berkshire Hathaway chairman and CEO Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of our generation, is also a champion of personal development who has shared a surplus of advice to help us live a good life. Here's a quote that he gave that gives the one word. He says, basically, when you get to my age, you'll really measure your success in life by how many of the people you want to have love you actually do love you. That's the ultimate test of how you have lived your life. The more you give love away, the more you get. So it's the one word, love, which I was not expecting to come out of Warren Buffett. But there you have it, right?
That's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. I read this. I don't know. I called a little BS on this to a certain extent. I think it's okay when you're a multi-billionaire to just say, just love people. Things will all be good. I don't know. Were you skeptical of this one, or did you find this to be? Did you believe what he was saying?
I think that his quote is cool. And it's like you said, you get to a point in life and you're like, hey, this is really amazing. It's Warren Buffett saying this. They break it down into three things. They're like, give love to your give love to your peers and colleagues. Maybe work well with people. Give love to your employees. Treat them well. And give love to your customers. But if you subtract the word love and you put in respect, or if you put in, act with decency or empower, right. Like I think you could work around. So I think it was kind of a, I don't want to call the article a bait and switch, but I think somebody finds this quote by Warren Buffett and thinks there's some magical, that was a nice quote about getting to the end of your years and realizing, this is a quality that matters, but wresting a whole business story out of that was a bit of a spelunking expedition, right?
It's what you and I have said a million times. There's been one business book written. They're all this, and there's one business article written. It's all the same thing, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated, and essentially you'll be okay. I mean, at the end of the day, all these business stories sometimes tend to run together. They just use different words. But I did agree with the third thing that you mentioned about, or the second thing was give love away to your employees if you're a manager or leader. And I found myself great success by allowing people to have ownership in what they were working on and making those sort of decisions for themselves. If they had a budget and they would be scared about spending it perhaps or whatever, and I'd say, hey, if your name was on the outside of the building, would you do this? Would you spend the money? And sometimes I would say 9 times out of 10, they would say yes because they were very much committed to the project they were working on. But there were times when somebody would say, I don't think I would. Maybe it's too risky. And rethink it. And I'd say it's okay if it's risky, but if you want to spend this sort of money and take this money out of your budget, let's just plan for what happens if it's a success or it's not a success. What are we going to do then? Because you're not going to get any additional dollars. So let's figure out how it's going to work. But I would always do that to people to say, if this was John Nash Incorporated, would you spend the money?
Well, I'm chuckling because one day I sent you a proposal for sponsorship of a sports team that was doing one of those adventure races. And we were really excited because we thought they're going to be on TV. It's going to get great coverage. So the proposal goes out. Tim was very responsive especially with proposals that had a time frame attached to them. And so maybe about 4 hours later, I get an email back. Sounds good. I think we want to do it. Call me. I call you up and I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? And you're like, what happens if they lose? You got to plan for the fact that they may not crack the top 3, 4, 5, and they may actually get dropped out at some point. It was a sobering bucket of water, and I get off the phone, and you said, I want to do it. We should do it, but please bear in mind that make it a part of the budget that you're not going to mind sacrificing, because it really is a roll of the dice. And in fact, the team was out of that race pretty soon after they entered it. It was a stiff competition and dangerous conditions.
If I remember correctly, one of the people got hurt right before it started.
Yes.
And then the other thing that happened that you can't control, and this is why, because I then got questioned about why we invested this money and we had zero exposure. But you remember what also happened is another car brand came in and they sponsored the whole show. So we had a team. So we had the Subaru Adventure team But the whole broadcast on Discovery, I think, was brought to you by General Motors. So they were by no means going to show the Subaru team, which happens in a lot of these things, that you could go in and have your team, or you could be involved in some way. But if you don't buy, that's where we always say this to brands. If you want to activate a sponsorship, it's going to cost you 3 times as much as your initial cost into a sponsorship. You just can't say, I'm going to sponsor something and hang up a banner. You then have to do all the other work around it, and people seem to forget about that. And it's a big part of activating a sponsorship or experiential marketing correctly.
That's how you actually educated me on Cyndi Lauper used to do the True Colors tour.
Right.
Back in the mid 2000s. It was an interesting opportunity. We could have been one of the sponsors of the nationwide tour. You looked at the number, you looked at the cities, and you said, this is a really great opportunity if you had 3 times as much money as you have right now. And I said, why? And you said, well, just because the concert comes to town and it's brought to you by Subaru doesn't necessarily mean people are going to know that. You are going to want to work with radio stations to give tickets away. You're going to want to create premiums for people to wear when they come to the concert that say the brand name. And everything was cha-ching, 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 like it was like a cash register ringing up everything to activate. So that was a fascinating lesson.
Right, because I think she was actually singing at the Nissan Theater, and then it was going to, then the next city was the Mercedes Stadium,
Theater,
whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you end up getting drowned out. Although I did it to success on the other end. Outback Steakhouses would do the Outback Bowl, the football bowl, and it was brought to you by Outback Steakhouse. And they, again, made the classic mistake. It was called the Outback Bowl, so they didn't really do any advertising. We bought all this Subaru Outback advertising around the Outback Bowl. When they did surveys, everybody thought Subaru sponsored the football event because we had all the Outback commercials on there.
Didn't you do the Gorge games, too?
Well, we did the Gorge games, but Lincoln Mercury had come in and they decided they were going to take over the whole event. Yet we had a cycling team and all this other stuff there, so we bought a bunch of bags because we know when people go to these events, because they always have these little kind of trade fairs going around with selling bicycles or parts or magazines. And so we had these big plastic Subaru bags with the logos and gave them out like candy. So everybody could put all their brochures and little knickknacks and takeaways and all their swag. And Lincoln Mercury went crazy because the place was filled with Subaru bags. And they had sponsored the whole event, but they didn't have anything for people to put stuff in. So everybody was walking around with Subaru bags. So yeah,
Tim called that, you called that guerrilla marketing. Because you go around an event. Anyway, we got off the trail a little bit because you actually were talking about this give love away to your employees. You allowed them to make decisions. You allowed them to grow career-wise, make mistakes, stumble, sometimes do great work.